Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today we have with us Marcus Chan. How are you, Marcus?
Oh, I'm so good. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you so much for taking the time. And what are your plans for the holidays?
Super low key, you know. So we're staying in town. My in-laws are right down the way. So we'll pop over there and see the family. We'll keep it pretty low key.
Yeah. I just realized I said that. And then, by the time this is aired, it won't be Christmas anymore.
Hey, it's all good. It's all okay. Good. It's all good.
Everything is real.
The Christmas spirit year round, then, whenever people listen to it.
Always. When you feel good all year long, right?
That's right. Exactly right.
So you're a huge famous guy, right? But I still I want you to introduce yourself in your own words. And we always like to do that because the way you can speak about what you do and where you're coming from and all that is way more powerful than me just reading it, right? So go ahead, please.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Marcus Chan, founder of Venliconsulting Consulting Group, and we work directly with B2B sales professionals, helping them earn an additional $50,000 to $100,000 more in sales commissions and bonuses every single year. Now, I ran this business now for just over 2 years, but before this, I was in corporate America for over 10 years, about 14 plus years. And I started from the very bottom, B2B sales. It was actually one of the worst reps ever. And I was really fortunate to actually get promoted 10 times in 10 years. Had some pretty cool success. Got to the point where I was leading a sales force of over 100 plus employees, doing 9 figures plus a year in revenue. And that was a lot of fun. And then eventually I made the leap into entrepreneurship. I started as a side hustle initially and then made the leap into full-time entrepreneurship back in September 2019. And that was a really scary leap, a lot of fun, but we've been running this business now for over 2 years, been really fortunate, made tons of mistakes, had lots of fun doing it. Just over 2 years, we've been over 300 plus clients. We've been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Market Watch, Yahoo Finance, Salesforce, LinkedIn, a lot of places like that. But we've been really blessed to have done this in such a short period of time.
And we're lucky that we found you too, is that we have to thank our podcast manager, Ken, and he's probably going to be watching this. And, he's the guy who finds the talent and he did a good job.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll see. We've only just begun this interview, so we'll find out.
No, man.
Downhill from here.
No, man. I'm checking out your graphics. You're on point. I'm checking your copy. I'm checking no. I know you got it going on, and you actually taking that leap into entrepreneurship. That's what I'm very fascinated about. And that's what I want for a lot of people. I want them to leave the 9 to 5, get into entrepreneurship and do it the right way. And so glad that you took this leap. What exactly happened that made you do this? This huge shift?
Yeah. So I wish I could say it was suddenly overnight. I just, it's just handed my 2 weeks in, I quit. It has a huge epiphany and it was amazing success overnight. Not the case. So the truth is, I grew up with a family of immigrants. My parents were very, very poor. They came to the US, escaping the communist revolution in China, and they started a restaurant. So they actually were entrepreneurs growing up, and we grew up very poor. So I saw this life, man. We grew up very poor, not having much, working 80, 90 hours a week, nonstop, crazy hours, and making very little money. So for me, I'm like, there's no way I want to be an entrepreneur. That was there's no way. I'm going to go get a good job. Now, obviously, I'm Asian. If you're watching this, I did not become a lawyer, doctor, or an accountant, or anything like that, right? So I went to B2B sales. Now, when I went in my corporate career, I really enjoyed it. In fact, I was just doing my thing, having success. It was really cool, making tons of mistakes. And I really didn't realize what I had achieved until about 7, 8 years into my corporate career. Because at this point, people kept saying, Marcus, how did you do this? How did you go from being the worst? How did you go from a top performer? How did you win all these awards? Why are you writing on corporate? How are you doing all these things? And I'm like, I don't know. I just work my tail off, I think. I don't know. I work pretty hard. They're like, no, it's more than that. You should write a book on this. I'm like, maybe I should. So this was this is 2015. And I'm like, I should write a book about this. But I didn't want to write a physical book. I'm going to write an ebook. And now everyone, their mother has an ebook. But I'm like, let me start that first. Let me write an ebook and just see what happens. So my first one I wrote is called The Corporate Climb: How I Can Promote 10 times in 10 years. So it was actually in 8 years, but sounds better 10 times in 10 years. So launched that, and I remember overnight I made $9.95. And I'm telling you right now, that was it blew my mind because at the time I was so used to a sales call. I was used to cold calling, prospecting, having a face-to-face conversation, interacting with someone, building trust, engaging with them, asking questions, and have a stranger pay me less than $10 on the internet was wild to me. So at that point, it was still pretty neat to me. And I was, making sales here and there, making about a couple $100 a month. Nothing crazy. I'm like, that's pretty neat. But you start getting to the point in your career, like you want to make more impact. You want to do more. And I'm like, what else could I do? So I started really studying internet marketing and like digital products and information products. And at the time, digital courses weren't as popular as they are today because now everyone has a digital course. And I said, I should create a digital course, but on what? I didn't know what. So I went and bought a program learning how to create a digital course, how to monetize it. And I started really thinking, what do I get asked a lot of questions on? And the most common questions I got asked were B2B sales questions that I thought people would know the answer to, that seemed really obvious to me, that they just didn't know. People that have been in sales for years. And I said, what if I was able to build something for me? Something that if I could give into myself when I started in sales, if I could just execute a playbook, I could have repeatable, replicatable success. So it actually took me 2 years to build the stack. At the time, I was in a hotel room, man, like 100 nights a year, traveling nonstop, big team, young family. It was crazy. So it took me 2 years to build this digital course, the A to Z for B2B sales. I built it out and it was January 2019. And I remember thinking to myself, after I spent all this time doing this, I'm like, what if I just wasted 2 years of my life? Like building and filming and doing all these things. Like, oh my God, what if nobody buys it? I launched it to a very small email list of 300 people. I woke up, made $2,000 overnight. And I was like, wow. And at this point, I did not just walk into work and quit the next day. I didn't do that still. I was like, wow. Like, because at this point in my career, having the level of success I was really fortunate to have, making really great income, life was great, just had a young family. I'm like, I can't have all the stock and I can't just leave this all behind. You kind of plan an exit. I'm going to do that. And at this point, I started getting this itch where I knew I could do more. Like I knew I could do more. I knew I could impact more people. And I kind of tested a little bit of the product market fit of being able to sell my products just like to outside world, but I didn't know if it would deliver. So I started planning over the next several months. I'm like, if it delivers, if I'm able to give people this delivered transformation of results, perhaps maybe it's a sign. So I started kind of mapping what that would look like. So I started to really map out, if I was to leave, what would that look like? How would my business be? How would it be structured? And I also want to time some things out. Because I said, if I was to leave, I had a bunch of equity I was going to invest in the summer. I wanted my equity, okay, for obvious reasons. I also want to make sure I had another award trip. I wanted my free awards to a 5-star resort in August. I wanted that as well. And if I was going to leave anything, I want to time out to after any earnings call because the stock would go up and I'd be able to cash it at a peak point versus a dip. So this whole time, over the next several months, I continued to promote the course. People were buying it. And on top of that, people were getting results. People were actually getting results, which I thought was amazing to me. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually having an impact on other industries across the world. So like the business started to slowly build up from there. And then I timed it all out. I mean, confidence and validation, because I definitely had this imposter syndrome. It gave me validation through this whole process. So finally, once I timed everything out with my President's Club trip, stock vesting, earnings scratch, and I felt good enough to make that leap, I quit my job September 19th, 2019, went all in the following day. And that was my official transition from corporate life of 14 plus years to that leap, in which, by the way, everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? You're giving up your amazing life to do what? You have a sales force of 100 plus employees, you have a big team, people report to you, authority, and you can go manage yourself. I'm like, yes. But that was my leap. But it's been a crazy journey, but I'm happy I made the leap, but it's been a very exciting time as well for myself.
Well, you know what? Congratulations to you to take that leap. It can be very intimidating, right? It can be very fearful because it's just unknown, right? And to take such a step from being in that kind of position to entrepreneurship, I give more value because now you're leaving something without having to know what's going to happen, right? Like if someone, if you're not anywhere and you go into business, that's common. But that way to go from something that you already had established into entrepreneurship, starting from the bottom up again, right? Through the whole process, commendable.
It was hard. I mean, it was a mental shift, especially on the surface, people saw all these things because I was pretty active on social media. I would post like, hey, I'm on a corporate jet. I'm doing these things. I'm winning this award. I'm in Mexico. I'm doing all these cool things. People are like, wow, he's got the life. He got the dream life. Like, he's giving this all to do what? And on top of that, it was like it was a hard mental shift for me personally as well, where you go from like, I knew I had all this reputation in my company and also had a great reputation, to going to the world where nobody knew me. Like nobody cares. Like who's this guy? No one would care. I knew no one would care about my past success. Nobody cares. Like one company, don't care. Your results, don't care. It's more like, who are you now and what can you do for me? So I knew that's a whole thing. On top of that, I knew the other barrier I would run into would be because the companies I had only for 2 major companies, both were very conservative. So they really didn't like if I was posting anything about my side hustle at all. So I would never post anything about that.
There's a lot of corporations that do that, right?
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
I have clients.
They would ask me like, oh, I saw you wrote this article, like, I'll like,
yeah.
I'm like, so why are you putting it on LinkedIn? And why are you doing
Did
this?
you read the guidelines? Have you reviewed the guidelines recently? I'm coming from corporate world too.
Right, so. right. So they're like, it was like, but the thing was, it was these unspoken rules. Like they couldn't like say, don't do it.
Yeah.
But they would like highly
question
it. Yeah. So I had to start over with that too.
Yeah. You had to start over with that as well. And then for you, this whole program that you do, right? You help individuals achieve, 50,000, 100,000 or more in a year, or is that even with sales teams, like individual people in a sales team in a corporation, or what are we talking about here exactly?
Great question. So one of the things was I knew when I was entering into the space, the sales coaching, sales training space, there's a couple of different approaches people can go into. Either number one, you can go and target the companies in which you're working directly with the sales teams and helping them, coaching and training them, developing them and do these things, or you can go after individuals. Now, most people in the space that I'm in, they go after the companies. Number one, because typically it's obviously way bigger ticket because you have a sales team of 50 to 100 people. It's bigger ticket.
Yeah.
The downside is it's also more competitive, right? The individuals, it's like there's tons of them, way bigger market, but harder to sell into because most of them are unwilling to pay for their own development, training, and growth. So I knew when I left corporate America, I knew I wanted to go after individuals. And the reason was because of this. When I was really thinking about why I was looking to make the leap, it wasn't about the money. I was making phenomenal money, right? It was about the impact and legacy. And what I was really what I was seeking now is to drive more impact and legacy. And when I was in corporate America, I had my sales team, but they would also fly me to corporate and I would train other teams as well. And that was really fun. But I always knew amongst the 100 people that I flew in to have me train that weren't on my direct teams or everyone else's teams, I knew 10% of people would take action and get amazing results. I knew 20% of people would say, Marcus, that's awesome. That's great. I'm going to do it. Maybe they're going to, maybe they won't. I knew the other 70% would not take any action at all. So I knew when I started my business, if I was going after companies, I'll probably run into a similar number, if not worse numbers, because frankly, like they don't know me. At least at the company, I had company credibility because I've been there for years. Outside, I'll just be some other sales trainer coming in, doing a training who probably never carried the bag, never did the job. And for me, that's not what it's about. For me, it's about impact. So the way I do it now is I target 100% B2B sales professionals, individuals who are carrying the bag. They're out there making cold calls, selling to all types of organizations, and they have their own quota to hit and they have to deliver a number. Now, as a side effect, my marketing and what I put out there, I also pick up corporate clients as well. I actually don't prefer them. So I tell them an exorbitant amount that I charge and some will still pay it. I'm like, I guess I'll do it. I do it because they're willing to pay it, but I really don't prefer it just because I know like when I work with the individuals, we get insane results. When I work with the teams, some of them will get results and some just won't pay attention, right? So like even with the companies that I'll work with, I'll do the teams, but I'll do like keynotes and stuff, which are great, sales kickoff events or whatever. That's fun for sure. I still prefer the individuals because when the individuals are handing over their hard-earned money, they are mentally drawing a line in the sand that they're committed to a better version of themselves. And when they draw a line in the sand, they're going to actually take results or get results. And when they get results, their life will change.
Yeah, they're invested more, right, into their future. And for your program, what would you say percentage-wise when you train these individuals? What percentage is strategy and what percentage is mindset?
It's actually a large portion of it. So it's a combination of really all the above. So the way the program is set up is, so I give them a few parts of access. Number one, we have a course part, which is like step by step, A to Z. It's like the original version I built out, I've redone it 5 times. So it's got better and better and better with each iteration. So it's like, it's more and more robust, more detailed as I've gotten feedback. That does a lot of heavy lifting for me. That covers all the core stuff. The first sections are all mindset and routine. Mindset, routine, getting the right belief system in place and thinking about the things the right way. And it's all step by step. And then they have context in which they have group coaching calls with me and also one-on-one access to me via Telegram, in which there I'm giving them more context as well, guiding them. Sometimes it's mindset shifts, strategy shifts, different ways of thinking, certain beliefs that they have. For example, they might say, I saw this framework for the phones. I don't think it's going to work for my industry. And of course, I'll ask them, hey, so tell me a little bit more. Have you tried it yet? Well, no. So how do you know it's not going to work? Like, I guess you're right. I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
So it's learn to teach them also how to think is a big part of the process as well. So I joke with some of the students that my program is actually a personal development program but I call it a sales program. It's really a personal development disguised as a sales program.
So percentage wise, would it be fair to say, 80% mindset, 20% strategy?
I would say, I mean, it's tricky because it's all interlaced in between.
Approximately, just like a rough idea.
I like at least 50-50 minimum.
50-50. Okay, good.
Because
mindset.
When I explain certain things, I'm like, here's objection handling, here's a strategy behind it, but here's a mindset you have to walk in with. So everything's all tied together. If I could say 100%, that's what it would be.
Yeah. So this course is B2B, right? So for example, if someone is solopreneur or self-employed professional, for example, he could also take this course if he's selling to a business.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll give you, we have consultants in there. We have other coaches in the program. It's even simpler actually when they do it because they control the whole process and they usually never have to prospect to the same level as like an individual who's carrying a quota.
And is it the course available on your website or something? How does it work with you? There's a part that has some one-on-one, I guess, or some group type of live as well included in that?
Yeah, so it's not available just to buy online because it's all comprehensive program now. So I took a look and, initially when I did the course by itself, like a couple years back, the very first version of it, I mean, we had a pretty good success rate. I mean, I would say at least 50% of people would have some sort of result, which is great. I wanted to improve that. So that's why I built in the group coaching, the Telegram access. And now for the people that actually take action, it's a near 100% success rate. So this is why it's so valuable. We build all together. So people that want to work with me, they apply to work with me. They talk to someone on my sales team. And then if it's a good fit, then we'll enroll them into our program.
Good. And for the presentation, for example, when someone goes into a presentation, like what do you think for actual connection with the prospect to actually connect with them? How important is that? Like during the presentation, when a lot of salespeople, they go in with a benefit dump, right? They just tell them all the good things about them and what they do and everything. Obviously your training helps with that, right? To get them out of that mindset. But how about connecting with the prospect? Any recommendations on that? Is it important in the process of sales?
100%. So if they don't trust you before you present, then your presentation is like talking to a wall. There's usually a very high level of skepticism. So as part of what I teach, I call the sales code selling system, in which the code stands for connect, open, direct, and expand. And when you're in the process, the mistake I find a lot of salespeople make is when they're in that meeting, that first meeting, and they ask maybe a couple questions and then they want to go and present and feature dump. The truth is if you run a proper discovery call first before you get to presenting or pitching, you can actually eliminate many of the objections on the front end. And the prospect will actually tell you exactly what's most important to them. So you can actually show them how you can help. And this way, you're actually presenting things that are actually relevant to them, actually will help them. And I'll give you a good example. So it's like this. So I remember, a few years ago, I was looking to go buy a car. All right. So I went down to the dealership, I was looking at different cars, and the salesperson comes up to me and starts pointing out certain cars and saying, hey, look how fast this car looks. Look how awesome it is. Look how sporty it looks. And I'm like, that's great. But to me, that wasn't important. For me, I just want a sedan so my family, my kiddo can sit in there comfortably, right? I didn't care about the speed. I didn't care about the 0 to 60. I didn't care about
He didn't ask questions.
He didn't ask any questions. He came and started just pitching to me all the amazing features that he found attractive.
But majority do that though, right?
Majority do that. Majority do that. So I equate to it's kind of like trying to sell steaks to a vegan. Doesn't matter how good those steaks are, they're not going to buy.
It won't matter.
Yeah.
You didn't care about speed. You don't care about 0 to 60, right?
Yeah, I didn't care about spoiling that. All I care about, hey, is it look pretty good? Is it comfortable, right? Like,
maybe he looked at you, right? He made a perception,
he just made some assumptions based on what he saw, right? Yeah. So that's why the key is like for a presentation, if you want to do a really good presentation, you ask the right questions up front. Yeah. So by the time you actually get to the presentation, they know you have a solution that can actually help them, even though they don't know what it is, but they're excited to see it now because you clearly uncovered their pain points, their desires, and where they want to go. And now you show them things that are going to help them get to that point. So they feel connected to them. Majority of the time, salespeople just feel, or prospects don't feel that person knows them or trusts them enough. Yeah. So then they're not willing to make a purchasing decision, make an investment, take a next step with them because they don't see the value quite yet. They're like, oh, this is just in the canned pitch to try to get me to buy.
Yeah. That connection is everything, right? Like that, how do you people do business with people, right? Is the product might be good, good. But if there's no trust, like you said, no connection, then that body doesn't take action, right? To take out the pen and sign on the line.
So I think about it's like this. It's because trust is the magic word here. So I imagine it's as if you went to the doctor, if you have a brand new doctor, maybe you're feeling a little bit sick, doctor comes in, takes a look at you, doesn't ask any questions, says, here, you need to have the surgery, come to this operating room right now. You'd be like, no way, I'm not gonna get operated right now. Like, I'm gonna get my spleen cut out.
I came to get my blood pressure tested,
checked.
You know?
Right. So exactly. So versus a doctor who's asking you questions, checking your blood pressure, checking your symptoms, maybe running a few tests. Then when they recommend something, whether it's a surgery or whatever, you're more open to the idea. But the more you trust the doctor, the more you trust their opinion. That's what it is on how they're going to solve your ailment or your issue.
And the main things in the presentation is the quality questioning and the actual listening, right, to the responses. Any tips on the listening part? Because, a lot of people have the monkey mind, right? Like there's so much going on, right? Especially both sides, even prospect, even for the sales. Any tips on that? How to make sure, how to kind of zone in and just exclusively listen to the person?
Sure. So early on, if outside, of course, the obvious of doing it millions of times will make you better at doing it. Or practicing with your friends and family and spouse, incorporate a couple of key phrases to help you with having a deeper understanding. So a lot of salespeople kind of have an ideal question they want to ask. So unfortunately, they become almost robotic because they're thinking, I'm going to ask 1, 2, 3, 4, like a checklist. It becomes like an interrogation or interview if they are asking questions. So you want to incorporate just a few different ED triggers to help you dig a little bit deeper, because the magic is actually in the follow-up question. So similar to the layers of an onion, the more layers you pull, you go deeper. So for example, if they're saying, hey, I'm having some issues with X, insert this very simple phrase, which is, can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's it.
Simple.
What about that specifically? Again, it's very simple. Like, can you elaborate on that?
The more they talk, right?
Correct.
It's about them. They need to be talking 80-20, right? So
100%. But also more importantly, then you can truly understand them. Because you may uncover that by asking these questions, you uncover they're actually not a good fit at all for what you have to offer. And that's okay. So it's just important to disqualify as it is to qualify.
Yes. And for pre-presentation, are there any pointers, any kind of tips for any mindset work or anything they can do to perform better in the presentation?
100%. So I'm a firm believer, if you're an entrepreneur or a salesperson, well, your performance is 100% based upon your routines and your habits to set yourself up in a peak performing state. And your ability to trigger yourself into a peak performing state allows you to show up better, not just for your customers or prospects, but also for yourself and for your families. So I'm a firm believer, really, if you want to excel in a presentation, it starts really the night before. So obviously you can prepare and do research on all of them. That's really important. But for example, proper night's sleep. Are you getting proper night's sleep? Because if you don't have a good night's sleep, you're not going to feel good the next day. That's very simple. In the morning, are you getting your blood flow moving? Are you doing some sort of physical exercise to get your blood moving and flowing so you have more oxygen pumping into your brain? Also, are you eating the proper diet? When you eat improperly, it impacts how you think and how you perform. If you don't eat anything, that also impacts how you think as well. So for example, if you wake up, and nothing against having a giant breakfast burrito, which I love, eat a giant breakfast burrito, and then you go and try to run to sales calls, like you're feeling a little sluggish right after. You're not feeling you're not on your game. And the truth is when you eat super clean, you process better and faster as well. So for example, I have one cheat meal a week where there's no rules and there's tons of sugar and salt and everything else in that meal. I always can feel the next day. Number one, I slept poorly. I look at all my stats in my Oura ring. I've had terrible sleep. It's never usually good. And also on top of that, I don't process as quickly. I'm not as sharp. I'm not as fast. I'm not as able to adapt on the spot. It's all based on the diet that I fed myself. On top of that, in addition to what you feed yourself, your body, what do you feed your mind to set yourself in a peak performing state? So if you are watching the news or reading the news all morning before you start your day, I'll tell you right now, you're poisoning your mind with things that are not going to serve you. You're simply getting biased information, whichever channel you're watching, whatever feed you're reading, you're getting biased information regardless. Doesn't matter what side you're on. That's just the truth. So instead, consume things that are going to feed your mind and make you think and grow. Listen to a great podcast like this. Reading a great book. Things are going to feed your mind. So you're feeling mentally, you're feeling physically good, you get sleep, your diet's feeling good, your brain's is proper. You can do affirmations if you want, you can do visualization if you want to take it to the next level. Do all those things, but now you're actually showing up proper to be able to give yourself the best version of you that you deserve for yourself and for your family and for your customers as well.
I like your answer, Marcus, because you're encompassing everything, right? Like you're encompassing the physical, the intellect, the spiritual, like you're actually putting it all together the night before.
Correct.
Right. So was the combination, right? And people forget that. A lot of people are just mindset, or some people are just gym, or, like, so it's a nice balance is so important. So important.
100%. I actually call it it's called the M5 system. If I have my M5 system dialed and it's built into a habit every single day, it'll set me up to perform at a high level. So number one, mind, which discusses that to fill things, your mind's right stuff. Number two is matter. Am I doing things that serve my purpose? Things that actually truly matter. Three is muscle. Am I physically working out so I'm feeling good? Money, right? Am I doing things that's going to generate income? Am I making sure my finances are dialed, which is really key? That limits the key stress many people have. And then the last one's marriage. So it's not just marriage to your spouse, but if you treat the relationships in your life, everyone, as if you were going to have to marry them, are you truly fulfilling your part of the bargain as a good friend, right? And we started thinking at this level, and you really incorporate this kind of M5 into part of your life, you are able to operate at a higher level and rhythm than most people are going to do, because most people are not thinking this way. Most people live unconsciously. They're unconsciously going through their life versus being conscious about their behaviors, their actions, their minds, and their thoughts. When you think this way, you can shift up to a better result by operating different level than most people are willing to do.
Yeah. I had such a huge transformation ever since I just became more conscious of me, like my conscious presence, and I live my life like that now. And it transformed the quality of everything I do. Everything. 100%. It's just, it feels like it's coming from somewhere else. Like it's not even here, it just feels so powerful.
You're spot on.
You can't even explain. Yeah. You can't even explain, like words can't explain that feeling, but that just knowing you, where you are, and especially in sales presentation, other thing, everything transformed. My podcast interviews have transformed. It's so important.
I believe in today's time, it has become a competitive advantage to be present in the moment.
Yes.
And it's one thing, and nobody's perfect. So I'll give you an example. So I always try to work on this as well, especially with my kiddo. Try to be present, not be on my phone, not be on an iPad, not be on a laptop, just like
I've done it too.
Being present, or sometimes you see it where it's, if you ever like just go on a walk and you don't bring headphones, you don't bring your phone, you don't bring it, you just walk. And you're just like, wow, the air smells so good. It's like so beautiful outside. You can hear the birds, you can see you can suddenly see all these things that are already there, but now you're actually aware. It's so wild. But this is something I'm always so wild. It's hard to do consistently, but this is why we have to practice every single day.
Yeah, it's part of my thing. Like I cannot do it, and I know what you mean, because sometimes your life gets busy and you forget to do it. But I find there's so much power and quality, energy and life and everything. Ever since I started living like this, like you said, there's things you don't notice. I never noticed. Like there's so many things that I'll come across like, oh my God, like where was this? What kind of, you know what I mean? It's just so, it messes you up because you say, what the hell, where was I living at? Right?
Totally.
Basically I was living in my mind,
Right. True. So true.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know what, Marcus, is great that you took the time to meet here on the show. We always like to ask our guests, what their inner superpower is that got you to this point.
Great question. I would say discipline. And it's one of those things where, I thought about over time. The truth is I've usually been the worst of most things I started at. And I think about, even as a kid, I actually grew up with a speaking impediment. So I didn't start speaking until I was 4.5 years old, with speech therapy for years. And I really struggled with speaking. In fact, it still kicks in today, my speech impediment, in which I stuttered, I slur, I stumbled. It still kicks in even today. This is like years later. But one of the things that helped me overcome that was being disciplined to the exercises they had me do. Like I consistent. I remember they made me wear this like silly puppet glove and tell stories in my hands. And this really forced me to practice saying certain words and do those things. I think about when I first learned how to swim. I was actually the worst swimmer. In fact, I failed all the swim classes, and like most kids pass by 5 years old. It took me until 9 years old to pass those classes. And finally I passed all the swim classes. I joined the swim team begrudgingly, and I was the worst like I was the worst swimmer on the team. But then a year later, by showing up, being consistent, I was one of the fastest 10-year-olds in the state.
Amazing. See?
And over time, I found this. I mean, this sounds super nerdy. I at one point got really into street magic, like doing like card tricks and coins.
Oh, yeah?
And whatever. Yeah. So I literally on a Saturday night, I would get all these books from the library, and I would practice over and over and over sleight of hand, over and over and over until my fingers had memorized the discipline to the process. I think about even when I was learning Chinese, how to read, write Chinese. I was write thousands of characters over and over and over until it burnt into my memory. So I've taken that discipline and I applied it to other parts of my life. Things I do not like to do, I did it anyways. I was disciplined to the process, and I was able to delay self-gratification. And that's really helped me across the board.
Amazing.
Starting the business, so hard. I mean, the first 6-12 months is probably the hardest. I mean, it's harder than anything I've ever done, but I was disciplined to the process. Did I think about quitting? 100%. For first 6 months, I probably thought about quitting every single day, but I was disciplined to the process and I kept showing up. And I really learned to love the process and be disciplined to it, because I do the right things consistently. It would eventually lead to success and freedom and unlimited growth.
That's a great inner superpower to have. Doing is one of the weaknesses of our society. Like a majority of people,
It's true.
is the doing they lack.
Right.
You know, it's just the action is the whole problem. Whatever's going on inside is the cause, is mindset, right? But to have that as a superpower, you're going to do really good in business. And I can relate to you. I couldn't speak till 5 either. I wasn't able to speak. I had a face deformity, like this
cleft
lip was, it was up, and they couldn't figure it out. They took me to specialists, all sorts of things. And then recently I found out in 2018 that I'm autistic. I don't know if that's the reason, if that's the connection, but it explains so many things growing up. And I just thought maybe that's probably it, because the doctors couldn't give an answer why it happened and how it fixed. I just started talking after 5 years old, and the lip got fixed, everything.
Wow.
It was like I was put on pause or something. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right. You know, Marcus, thank you so much for, again, taking the time to come on the show. It's an honor to have met you. I've made some of the best friends through this show. So I'm hoping that you'll keep in touch. I'm in Toronto here in Canada. If you ever need anything, just let me know. I'm pretty sure I connected to all your socials. If I didn't and you see me somewhere, just add, and I'll see your content and try to be engaged on your stuff, on your work.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.